It's Tuesday, April 15th at 2:30. This is the MPO's Bicycle Pedestrian Trails Advisory Committee, and it's being called to order. Is there anyone online? I don't think it looked like anyone was joining, but okay, do we have a quorum? No. Great. How many do we need for a quorum? Okay, I don't think there's anything getting voted on until later, so fingers crossed. Okay, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all for joining me in the pledge. So we'll now open the meeting for public comment. That includes any comments on the agenda. So you can see there are different ways that you can provide those comments. You can either fill out the comment card before the meeting, email them, or post them in the public comment form on the website. So did we receive any public comment forms? Okay. So next we have approval of the minutes for February 18th, 2025. Those were included in your package. I'll open the floor for either a motion or any changes. Oh, yeah, okay. Well, you're right.
I do have a question about that. I did look at the packet and I only saw the agenda, but did I miss an email somewhere? I'm trying to find.
I was
emailed the agenda, but I don't think, and then in that same packet, I didn't have the meeting minutes for this.
Yeah.
Did that get sent?
I only got the agenda.
You only got the agenda, okay. Sorry.
Was that an attachment or?
No, there were two, when I received, there was two PDFs, one was for the CTST and one was for this meeting.
Okay.
And then it was the agenda, normally it's consolidated into one thing.
Yeah.
It ended with the agenda.
Okay, and was it as an attachment or as a download link?
It was a attachment.
As an, okay,
That's a standard procedure, I think you guys send the attachment. Could you?
if the agenda is very long, we do send a download link.
Okay, let me check.
That didn't include the link.
Yeah, okay.
Let's see if I can get that forwarded to you.
Okay.
Well, so there was a reminder one that sent that didn't have the link, but the original one did have the packet link.
Okay,
So maybe just include the link in the reminder one too.
okay, we can do that.
All right, we don't have a quorum to vote, but if there are any comments on the minutes, we can take them now and then move it to the end of the agenda in case we get one more person. So does anybody have any revisions or comments on the minutes? Seeing none, can we move that to the end in anticipation of one extra soul coming in? All right, moving on, we have the presentations next. First is our FDOT report, and we have Tanya Merkel here to discuss all things FDOT.
All things FDOT, I don't know, we're fairly quiet, I've got in my list of central recommendations for, up to central office today. So that was, the deadline was today, so it's up there. So they're gonna go through it and see what's happening. Some projects that we had going on, I know that you are a part of this, Corinne, that we were working on your crossing by Alderman, and we got that worked in design to cross on the north side as wanted. We partnered with the city to make sure we got everything right so that what they have with their trail coming across is going to work. And we got that going, so that was a good thing. Cortez Vision is still going on with the action plan. And I got distracted by that. The action plan, we're actually meeting with one of the Manatee commissioners tomorrow to discuss some more about it. And it's just going through. I'll let you know more when that happens and what we're going to do. Other than that, the other projects, I haven't heard back from the teams on anything, so DOT, we're just plugging away right now. I'm also getting ready to start a project to get a network put together for me that's going to show what we have on our state roadways as well as all my local partners. So you're going to have a consultant team reach out to you to get what your current plans are. And so that they're gonna get the data and try to see where everything is and how we actually have gaps. So I want to make it a network with all of the local routes, whether it be a bike route or official bikeways that you have, just so that we do. Because what happens is that we end up patchwork. And that's not really a network. We're really pushing for a network. And as I go forward with looking at other projects and what we're doing to push that forward, we're having more trails coming. So I want to make sure that all these little spurs connect and that we have that. So just like how Legacy Trail is growing and what's going on and down south, that we're trying to go down to Bonita and Estero and then see what we can do. Coast to coast is further up north. So there's just a lot of connectivity there, but we have little gaps all throughout the system. So I'm just trying to condense it so that all parties are aware of what we can put together. So that is coming up soon. So my local partners, you might get some emails from me and we're just asking for that so that we can put that together. So that's the main thing that I have going on right now. The FDOT side, but other than that, we're just going forward and just trying to continue with the multimodal focus and safety. And I'm also having conversations with Tallahassee about now that we do have the green paint as part of the approved products list and doing that, we're trying to see the longevity and maintenance of it. Thermal, what should we do? How should we use it? And what concerns are, if people have concerns with the way it feels as far as when we lay down the green paint and if we're doing skip lines, how do my riders feel about it? Is this good or bad? We're just trying to get more input now that it's actually officially in place. So there's throughout the state, every district has different experience with it. So we're trying to put our heads together and come up with a good way to manage this, especially for the maintenance and as it goes forward.
Does anyone have any questions for Tanya?
I'm here, so we'll be working away together.
Or any questions?
Uh-huh.
Are there areas that you're looking to pilot the green paint? Because I know that there's the Fruitville Beneva Safety Project where
Right.
there's the keyhole lane, and we thought, at least the city's perspective, thought that would be a good location to have the green paint, especially by adding that
Right.
turn lane. So,
Okay.
and maybe other people have potential pilot projects on state roads that they would want to provide to Tanya as they're looking to evaluate implementing green paint on bikeways. Just a thought.
Yeah, we'll have probably some projects that we'll get some recommendations for that once we, still waiting on the first draft of our SS4 report, right? That should be imminent. It's not imminent, we don't have it yet, but our timing to complete that report's like by the end of the summer, right? So if your pilot program or if you are looking to establish that anytime after that, we should probably have some kind of projects for you. The plan doesn't entirely focus on state roads, but where they intersect with local roads is where we'll have a lot of action.
Yeah.
So would it be beneficial for you for us to have a list of recommendations from both counties and municipalities within the counties we meet, I guess quarterly by next meeting?
It's always good to have more information in my hip pocket, and then that way, when projects do come along and monies are there, I'm ready to go.
Okay,
But
so,
that's just something to consider.
yeah, do you guys want to send out a reminder to the BPTAC to get those lists compiled, but before next? So we can like give them to Tanya by next BPTAC? It's your office. Cool.
But yeah, I mean, like I
It's not
said,
that it's not like the purpose of that, but if you're like looking for pilots to see its
it
effectiveness.
potentially is, and that's something I want to look at and seeing how the maintenance side of it goes, longevity, because They are so new, they're not sure how it's gonna go, because we do have the interstate shields that they've been putting on the lanes and things like that, but obviously you have car traffic on it, so it's a little different. But
And we have the sun.
yeah, so there's
Heating
just,
down.
that's part of what the discussion was with between the humidity and the heat, how that is impacting the materials that we use. So that's why it's just sort of trying to see where it's gonna go.
Okay, well, we look forward to hearing more about that progress, and we'll have some pilot locations by next meeting for you. Not that you asked for it, but
Corinne wants
happy
to share.
provide. Does anyone else have any questions for Tanya before we move on?
I'm just gonna say, I love seeing the green paint out there as a rider. I think it's a real benefit and effective.
And we're putting it at our DDIs when we have all the bicycle
That's so
crossings, just to specify, we're not doing the whole stretch. It's just to highlight, these are the points, the conflict points, this is where you enter, this is where you exit. And that's what we're doing. So all of the DDIs that are coming in, that's part of what we've been doing.
Well, those right-hand turn crashes.
Trying the safety part, because if you actually have a physical separator, sometimes that's not necessarily enough, because obviously the cars are gonna run over that. And then there's the maintenance on it, so we're trying to weigh it out.
I love the green paint.
Thank you. Now maybe I'll get you on a roundabout.
You said you submitted the Sun Trail,
I-
today.
The projects are list.
What's the state's timeline after that in terms of, letting you know projects that are awarded? Like, are you expecting it to be in October? Like, is it?
Isn't it in the work plan?
Yeah.
Work program?
It's a work program.
Yeah.
It goes with it, because no matter how it gets orchestrated and laid out with our funding that central office has for the whole state and turnpike, it still changes until work program is locked into place. So that's why we say draft tentative is sort of where it's at, because even what we have laid out up until that gets published, it can change on us. And that's where it gets hard for me to give you a hard
Yes.
deadline, because it's based on the work program.
So do you score and prioritize every project that gets submitted and submit all of them? Or do you don't take any off the list?
We get everything that comes in, we have to go through our review and see that all the parts are there, because it is part of statute. There's certain bits of paper that need to be there.
Yeah.
If that isn't, so then it won't qualify. There's certain, that's the paperwork side of it, and then just making sure the engineering pricing that's in there that is realistic, because we're going off of what you submit to me. I'm not doing the work for you, so I'm hoping you've done a thorough vetting of it by the time it comes to us. So that's why it's a struggle. When as the project progresses, all of a sudden there's a shortfall, something happened. It's like, that's why you're supposed to look at it beforehand. We know there's little parts and pieces that do happen, but that's this hard part, because we are a set amount that we get for Sun Trail. It doesn't change, it's set. So, and it goes throughout the whole state. It's not a certain percentage goes to each district or a certain location. It just gets determined from that. And part of what I want to continue to suggest is that let's push forward on the projects we already have going, so that we can have an end product. It's hard that I keep getting new projects coming in, that we have to start over and have the PD&Es, and hence we end up with all the PD&Es. Yes, sir.
So given that, we still haven't received any notification information about the $250 million. That was a one-time allocation for Sun Trail.
That,
Yeah, I still don't have any information on where that $250 million went. And now it's instead of $25 million here, it's 50. So I wouldn't understate the importance of the Sun Trail allocations have doubled in the last
right.
2 years. So that being said, I would caution with yes, it does get distributed throughout the state. it has gone up in recent years and it's continuing, I think, to go up. There is still support for Suntrail statewide stuff. If we could still share that with this group, where the $250 million from the one-time allocation from 2024, what that was spent on, and then what the plan is, obviously going forward, once the next $50 million is allocated for this round of projects, how that's being spent, that would be helpful.
Okay, I know a portion of it went towards the Collier Boat Trail that is ongoing and in the PD&E phase, so that
Everyone loves so much.
hey, that was done way above our level. It was brought down to us and said, here, you're doing this. We didn't get to go through it, so it got thrown on District 1 as well. It wasn't something we went searching for. And that's where, because of political powers that may be, that's where a lot of it went. And then also from a lot of ongoing projects that needed to be made whole, because there were a lot of struggles, as we know, price increase and staffing and issues. There was so much that we were working on that. So that money is all being allocated. I can go back through and get you, I'll get you.
Know where specifically, like, I've heard ballpark $30 million for the PD&E for Polk Collier. That's a significant amount of money and something out of our control, correct?
Mhm.
You know, we take this through the prioritization process, we take this through, you know, our local agencies that provide us projects to something at that realm. We haven't seen $30 million ever in the Central money in this region. So I think in one single go. So I think it would be good to provide an explanation to everyone and where this money went, why it did. That way we understand where we're going and how we can get off of PDDs and into construction.
Right, and a lot of that too, the way it was allocated, was not asked of the districts
So,
how it was done. I'm just
I
saying,
understand.
as far as that went, it was already.
And these are still conversations we're having in the central office, so. Understood.
So circling back to you submitting to Central,
Yes,
are you able to share how you prioritized them and the list you sent to Central? Because I would like to see that, if we can.
I'll see what yeah.
Okay, all right.
I can.
Patrick,
Yeah.
yes.
So then, okay, so Ryan, is there any of that money left over, are you saying, or is that all been assigned?
You'll be back, you're gonna get a lot of water out.
Okay,
No, I think so.
All-
There's 250
that's
million.
all.
She's
it's
gonna
all assigned,
That's-
okay,
that's
okay,
been
so there's no like
extra
extra money that we're gonna meet?
No, and then
Okay.
even right now, there's. What I really say is that we plan out where the projects are gonna be. So projects that have already been started, you kind of know, okay, the next phase is in 2 years, this is how much is needed. So that's why we have the 5-year work program. That's already put into it. So in that sense, we don't really have the funds until the new 5th year. That's what I always say, because
everything's.
we plan the structure from what's already been started, saying, okay, 2 years you'll be here, 2 years you'll be there, and knowing that. So that's why a lot of that's already spoken for. Obviously, things change because projects have to move, incidents happen, so that's why we go through a shuffle.
Okay, and then for my first question about the timeline for the next steps for the current cycle, typically, so it's tied to the drop tentative work.
Which is in November.
It has to November, so we probably know something by November.
Mhm.
Okay, when people ask me, that's what I can tell them.
Yeah, it's all on our work program.
And you can go to the public meetings when it comes out,
Yeah.
to make sure they don't take it out.
We're people for that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think we have
yeah.
a ton of people for that. All right, was there any other questions for Tanya about FDOT related matters? Seeing none, we will move to the next item, which is MPO reports. And we have the high injury network priority segments and projects, and I'll hand that over to Nina.
Thank you. You can go to the next slide, for me, please. We definitely gotta grab one of them.
I saw that going crazy for a while, I was like,
Yeah, thank you for bearing with us.
We haven't, nobody went in yet, if nobody, was somebody on in to Now we don't have a forum, so we'll see. You'll
So
be our chair. Vice chair.
what we've had here today on the high injury network, priority segments and projects is, I think we've probably heard me say a couple of times, that we were taking a closer look at the MPO's high injury network to sort of do more refined analysis of the high injury network and then also to identify specific safety projects that can be considered for the cost feasible plan in the 2050 LRTP. So I just kind of want to do a quick overview of where we are on that. I shared the draft list of projects in your packets, so hopefully you received that. Just want to note again that those are in draft format. We are still taking a closer look, but just wanted to get your eyes on that as well. So just for some background, the high injury network was last updated with the 2023 crash assessment. This is a collection of 20 roadway segments in the 2-county area that represent roadway segments where fatal and serious injury crashes are higher than the average in the 2-county region. So on the high injury network, we're seeing 45% of all fatal and serious injury crashes and 39% of all fatal crashes. So we know that in focusing on safety, the high injury network is gonna get us the best return in terms of our investments, right? Not to say that there aren't other safety issues throughout the region, but this is probably the worst of the worst if we're looking at the numbers. Pedestrians are the #1 most frequent crash type on the high injury network when we look at crash types. Pedestrians are top of the list. So 49% of all fatal crashes involving a pedestrian happened on the high injury network. And then 30% of serious injury crashes involving a pedestrian happened on the high injury network. For bicyclists, it was 37% and then 43% for serious injury crashes. So the high injury network is a really good place for us to start looking at making very key strategic investments in safety. So
High energy network, state roads. But state roads only, right? Here.
Federally,
Right.
MPO roads,
Yeah.
right?
roads, right.
MPO
Okay.
roads, right? So it's mostly state roads, but there are a few local roads in there as well. But as can be expected, largely FDOT maintained large arterial roadways, high speeds, several lanes. So from there, if you look at the roadway segments, some of those are several miles long. So we want to take a closer look at the high injury network. So we did a more detailed analysis and we identified segments on the high injury network based on the number of fatal and serious injury crashes. So what you see on this map, and I believe this was included in your packets and we can send out the presentation as well, is these segments exist on the high injury network. And where you see gaps where the entire network is where there were no fatal or serious injury crashes. So it's a more refined look at the high injury network. And so we basically looked at segments where there were a low, medium, and high number of KSI crashes. So on the high injury network, which is the worst of the worst, we're looking at the lower and the medium and the high of the worst, right? So we looked at all fatal and serious injury crashes, and then we also broke it down into non-motorized fatal and serious injury crashes. We've got an interactive map that we'll link out and send to you after the meeting, and you can take a closer look at those layers. So what we're doing is we have integrated this into the project prioritization process, because when we prioritize your projects during the annual call for projects, we look at safety. So we have the updated crash assessment now, and so we've integrated these safety segments into the prioritization process. So from there, we looked at the high HIN segments, and we identified safety projects where can we make strategic key investments with the funding that we do have available to improve safety for our road users and largely for bike paths, right? And so that's where the draft list of projects came in. That was what was included in your projects. We have done a little bit of talking to FDOT on some of these projects. We know that there's been some investments in those corridors already. So there's still a little bit of ground truthing that's going on. So they're not in final form yet. But we looked at safety project segments. Some of these are largely familiar. A lot of US 41, US 301, University Parkway, our big state roads. You'll see where there's also a list that I did not include that specifically looks at signals and where we can make improvements in signalized intersections for roadway safety as well. And then we did a list specifically for intersections, and that's where a great deal of those bike ped, focused areas are coming in. So as we're refining the list, we're also hoping to include in the long range plan recommendations for safety improvements at these locations. So not just to say, hey, let's do a safety project at this location, but to say, let's target the safety issue that is actually happening here and making sure that that project will address that safety concern. So that it's responsive to the reality of what's going on at those locations.
Nina, I had a question here. How does this relate to the FDOT's safety action plan? Because it's probably the same state road system, their high injury network and their top 20 projects or whatever. Is there a correlation, or this was just done completely independent of what FDOT's done?
There's probably a lot of overlap, right? Because most of the concerns are the FDOT roadways. So there is a good amount of overlap between FDOT's safety study in Manatee County, which I think works because we want these locations to be prioritized by FDOT as well as the MPO so that we can leverage funds and make strategic investments between the state and the MPO. So it's not, we did not exclude projects that are already on that list. This helps emphasize those locations and saying that these are really safety priorities for us.
Okay, thank you.
So you can do the QR code now, but we will send you the link for this so you can take a closer look at those roadway segments on your own time. The layers in that map will include the high injury network, which you've seen. Then it'll have a breakdown of the safety segments for all fatal and serious injury crashes, the safety segments for bike ped only safety or fatal and serious injury crashes, and then the locations of those safety projects. So with that, before I move on, I'll take any other questions that you might have on the process or what we're doing with this information. If you have any specific comments about the projects, we'll take them as well.
Does anyone have any questions for Nina?
I have a question.
Okay, Patrick.
Your bike ped is one group, but I think, are we looking at vulnerable users usually include motorcycles, right? Are you including motorcycle data in here, and is it included in the vehicular data, or is there any plan to include it in like a vulnerable user category?
It would be included in the all fatal and serious injury crashes.
Okay.
And if we're doing a more detailed look at the crash types at those locations, that road user would be called out. But we're not looking at it specifically, no. And our bike peds is included as vulnerable road users, but we don't have a vulnerable road user category.
Right, okay, yeah, because I just sometimes like the way they classify the data in the databases is like under vulnerable user usually lists the bike ped, and then they put the motorcycle stuff in that group, right? So, okay.
Is there any other questions? All right, I had something that you had talked about. You said it's incorporated in your prioritization process already. Can you elaborate on that? Do you mean to say you changed how safety is scored in your prioritization process?
So the scoring has remained the same, but the prioritization had included crash hotspots from the previous crash assessment, and then also bike ped hotspots from the previous crash assessment. So since we've updated the crash assessment with new data, we've just sort of subbed out the high priority segments for the hotspots throughout the region. So it's more targeted.
Do you have an analysis on the impacts on the scoring of the projects that got submitted based off of that? Has that been brought to the TAC?
No, but we can certainly bring that to the TAC. We do have an update on the prioritization and the LRTP goals and objectives report. And none of the nothing that went through the 2025 call for projects went through the scoring system. So it'll only be implemented in this next call.
I would be interested to see how even 2024, 2025 project priorities score against that and what that discrepancy is, if there's a big one. Something to consider.
So you'd like for us to rescore the 2025 projects with?
I mean, not all of them, you can just take a couple of them, there's a lot of them, but yeah, I would look at that, because that could be a huge difference for some projects.
I would argue the difference,
Well, that's, I can't know that.
it would be
you know?
minimal, I mean, if you think about what it was swapped for one category, which would be the maximum of 3 points weighted against that, so really it'd be like 0.2 or 0.3 if it was on the list or not, so we'll just categorically by the numbers, right? If that one category was split from what used to be heat map from 2017 to now for high injury network, it would only be a maximum of 3 points in that one category. So I see what you're saying, we can certainly bring it, but it wouldn't really change, substantially, it'd be less than half potentially.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see that based off of the evaluation.
And like I said, we're gonna do a full, following the LRTP, we're gonna do a full revisit to the priority process itself. And we'll go through the entire process of looking at, are these still the right measures to use? How do we want to score these? Does it still make sense from the approach that we used in the prior years? So that'll be redone as well.
Any other questions?
I took a quick comment. I know I said our own SS4A is report and study. I haven't received the draft yet. I've got snippets of things, right? And I think the difference that I'm seeing in our data, which is only Sarasota County, right? Yours is Sarasota Manatee, is that I think the majority of your bike ped injuries were pedestrians, did you say? Okay, ours, I think in Sarasota County, right now the numbers are looking more, it's a little bit slightly more skewed towards bicycles, right? And that's not a huge discrepancy. I think there was like 11.1% of serious crashes were bicycles and then 9.7 were peds. So at least in the county here, it's our local data is a little different than the regional. So anyway, that's just a comment.
Sure. What was the data source? You guys use Sidian?
Singapore.
Singapore, okay. We use Singapore.
So I have to check.
All right, next report, active transportation projects.
I just wanted to, I'm not done yet.
Oh, I thought you were done. I thought you were done, sorry.
Before I moved into the data, I just wanted to get the questions. So this is just taking a look at the safety data, right? So this is information that you've seen when we adopted the safety targets. The MPO is required to adopt a set of 5 performance measures around safety. One of them is non-motorized fatal and serious injury crashes. And so the top of the black line is looking at the combined total of fatal and serious injury relative to the targets that we have set. And so really I'm going to focus on the combined total. These are 5-year averages, so it's looking at larger trends in the system. So this is the performance measure, which is a combined total. When we disaggregate the data and we look at fatalities against serious injuries, when we look at the total, we see that the numbers are coming down. When we look at serious injuries, we see that the total has been coming down a little bit over the last few years, right? It's a positive trend, still a high number, a positive trend. However, with those fatalities, we are still seeing a consistently increasing trend in fatalities of pedestrians and bicyclists. However, even this, I think, doesn't paint an accurate picture of what's happening. So when we look at non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries against the total fatalities and serious injuries in the 2-county area, we see that the percentages are increasing for both fatalities and for serious injuries. So bicyclists and pedestrians getting killed or seriously injured relative to the total number of fatal and serious injury crashes in the 2-county area is increasing year after year. So when we look at data like this, we see positive trends in terms of serious injuries or the combined totals, but it is important to remember that as part of the larger system, our non-motorized users are still the most vulnerable and are still the least safe on the roadways. And it is important to continue prioritizing non-motorized road user safety, which is part of what we're trying to do with a high injury network to really make targeted improvements.
Are you using law enforcement data and emergency room data to come up with these numbers?
These numbers are coming from Signal 4, which is all through crash reports submitted by law enforcement. So if the crashes are not reported to law enforcement, they're not going to be captured in the data. Any just comments on that?
Any questions or comments? Patrick, thoughts?
I
See you noodling.
don't know. There ones that, well, I like so the trend is down, right? And so are we saying, but the percentages are going,
So the
Just
overall crashes, the overall trend is going down, but the serious injuries and the fatalities are trending upwards.
As a relative to the total KSI crashes.
Can I just mention on Manatee County roads is actually the opposite. The total crashes have gone up. Population's gone up.
Yeah.
But the fatal and KSI crashes have gone down over the 6-year period between 2018 and 2023. So that's not the trend on Manatee County roads. That excludes state road network through the county. Because that is where the trend reverses.
Absolutely, and that's what we're seeing in the high injury network and why we're continuing to coordinate very closely with the state on making safety improvements where we can.
Just what's the definition of a serious injury crash? Would a hip be a serious injury crash? Would a collarbone be a serious injury crash? Would a head trauma be a serious injury crash?
I think anything that gets you hospitalized.
Because it's in my opinion that only those that get reported to the police department get reported, but if I talk to somebody in ICU at Lake Memorial or something like that, they see far more crashes of cyclists than what the data does indicate.
Absolutely, yeah.
those don't get reported, like people in the
Not
ICU?
at all, Patrick, we're trying to work on that at the state level.
How do they not get
Mixing
reported?
the crash data from the police department with the HIPAA information, which they could be able to get from the healthcare system. So for example, they had broken collarbone, broken hip,
Yeah,
and none of that has been ever in the system.
oh, there was never like a law
Never.
enforcement that showed
No.
up, they just took you to the hospital, or you
That's right.
took yourself there?
Because and if it's a non-vehicle type accident that you have on your bicycle, yeah, it doesn't get reported. It doesn't get reported if it's on private property either.
Okay,
We're going round and round, I try to get accurate statistics, but in my opinion, and several others with Florida Bike Association, our statistics for crashes is far underreported.
sure.
So we're working at trying to get them reported correctly, so we could perhaps get some additional funding to address these spots.
Right, okay. I guess my original thought was the whole relational population, right? Just like with the trends going up, but so like, and obviously with 20, like we account for population growth in this, right? And do the trends reflect that? Like, are we saying like, okay, there's more people, but the trends are going down, so we're actually maybe doing better, or I don't know, how are we involving population growth?
We did for the board presentation in January, we did look at crashes per 100,000.
Yes.
I don't have the numbers off the top of my head.
Yeah.
We can share that.
Okay,
So this is looking at, and also when we focus, so this is only non-motorized users, right?
Right.
If I look at, we look at the trends for serious injury crashes as a whole, they've also been trending down. Fatalities have been sort of plateauing, kind of slightly increasing. But when we look at non-motorized against the total KSI, we're still seeing an increasing number. So whereas serious injuries might be trending down as a whole, as a proportion of total serious injuries, it's still trending up for non-motorized.
okay,
So safer for people in their vehicles.
right,
that's
yeah,
safe.
okay.
Yeah,
That's actually a very good way to explain it.
You also have a statistics use, it's one of the measure, that's if you're a bicyclist, you know the number of bicyclists has increased markedly since COVID. And although that I'm observation, there's been some reduction in that, it's still, numbers are still probably, I think at least 50% more bicyclists than there were prior to COVID. So you have also more people out there, not only more people, but more people on bicycles.
Okay. Is there any other questions about the safety information that Nina presented? Okay, ATP.
okay, thank you. So this is a quick overlook at the ATP projects. I very briefly mentioned it at the last meeting. It was requested that we sort of highlight it a little bit more. And then I'll go into the projects that the active transportation priorities that are currently funded. And taking a look at the draft tip for next year. So the ATP was most recently updated in September 2024. It was last updated in 2019, and before that in 2013 was the Bike Ped Trails Master Plan. So the vision for the ATP is to improve walking, bicycling, and transit networks, encourage connections, so that we can safely and conveniently, use these modes to move around the area. Goals are safety, increasing the number of non-motorized trips, promoting fair engagement in transportation planning, design, funding, and implementation, and achieving a connected and safe, accessible, and comfortable network for bicyclists. A number of you all in this room may have participated in some of the stakeholder meetings that we had, as well as the stakeholder workshop that was hosted here just about a year ago. So we try to get as much input from what's happening at the local level in the active transportation plan, and then also to identify key projects and critical connections. And then this was also presented to the committees as well. So this is a quick overview of what that vision network looks like. So the line in red is the Sun Trail system, the Gulf Coast Trail. The active transportation network really revolves around this trail as the regional spine. The vision network relies on connecting regional activity centers, doing multimodal connections, and the ultimate goal is a low stress network for bicyclists and pedestrians. That really focuses on projects like complete streets or separated bicycle facilities. What was different about this update to the active transportation plan relative to the 2019 was that we identified specific projects in the plan. So previously the vision network was integrated into the LRTP. This time we're doing the vision network as well as a list of specific priority projects. So when you take a look at this vision network and you take a look at the gaps relative to where those high stress roadways are, it's most of the network because these are our large regional connectors, right? So there's a lot of gaps, most of them are really high stress. So we took the comprehensive list of projects on the vision network and we threw it through the MP's prioritization process, scored them, and then we identified those projects that really address the high stress segments so that we can bring down the stress level for bicyclists and pedestrians, that would complete critical sidewalk gaps, and then also move forward extensions of the trail network. These recommendations for these projects, when you take a look at the list, is mostly complete streets, as well as adding shared use paths in the existing right of way, doing some restriping for separated bicycle lanes, and filling sidewalk gaps wherever possible. So this list of projects will also be included as much as possible into the 2050 long range plan for eligibility for MPO funding. So these are projects that you would be able to submit to be considered for funding through the MPO's process. I don't have the list of the projects in front of me. I included them in your packets. These shouldn't be new to you, but especially as we're working on the 2050 long range plan, we're working on developing the cost feasible plan, and we have the call for projects coming up again at the end of this year. It's good to know what those projects are and how they fit into your larger plans as well. And so that's kind of where we are on the projects and what the ATP means. It's really the bike ped transit core of the long range transportation plan. So with that, this is the list of the transportation alternatives projects, the active transportation projects on the 2025 list of project priorities. These projects were submitted by you all, by your jurisdictions. They were prioritized by the MPO and they are eligible for funding. The projects that are highlighted in the green at the top with the FPID number next to them have had at least one phase funded in work program. The rest that have the numbers 1 through 7 to the left are yet unfunded. So I'll do a very quick run through of what those projects look like in the current STIP. And this is going to be difficult to see, so I have some on that if you wouldn't mind passing these around.
Oh, I was like,
Then we received the tip download for the next MPO's transportation improvement program yesterday. So I'll give you a little bit of insight on what we're seeing in that draft tip. The tip will go out for public comment on Thursday, so you'll see these projects in there as well. So on this list on the screen, the projects that have boxes around them do appear in the next FY26 tip. So you'll see there's a lot of them that are not included, and we'll go through why that might be. And so these tables are included in your printout, just so that you can see them better. And this is taken from the current step. And then you'll see on the footer, I have a note on where it is for the draft FY26 tip. So the first one on the list is the Palmetto Trails Network Plan. It's existed in the work program for quite a while. FDOT is the lead on this project. It is wrapping up, I believe, the PD&E phase at this point. I know they had a public workshop a few weeks ago. So we're hoping to see some outcomes of that very, very soon. It's not included in the next FY26 tip, but the MPO will continue to monitor that project as recommendations come out of the PD&E and those segments go in for design funding. And so the funding on that, there is some MPO TA funds on there, as well as district dedicated federal funds. Next, we have the Legacy Trail overpass at Beneva, and then right after that also is the Legacy Trail overpass at Bahia Vista. So both of these projects have quite a bit of SU and TALU funds. These are both MPO discretionary funds. These projects, I believe, have completed design. They're ready for construction funding when those fundings become available. However, these projects are not included in the next draft 26 tip. Both of these projects are eligible for SunTrail funding. They are consistent with the SunTrail network. And so these can be prioritized for SunTrail funding to move them into the construction phase.
Sorry, so this number for like 2028, this 6 million number, right, that's not
construction.
That's not. Sure.
So
It's being moved.
it's being
removed. That has been removed.
But I don't think that's funded.
Are getting.
Beneva and Bahia Vista do not have best money on the.
We don't.
Oh, that's Clark, right?
Clark, it's Clark, you're drawing
It was like, Okay.
So this is,
So this one's getting pushed, those two are getting pushed out, or?
They're not just, we just did not have $12 million dedicated to shoot for those projects this time. So they are eligible for SunTrail for future years, and continuing to apply for those in the coming years.
So next is the Morgan Johnson sidewalks in Union County. This project is continued into fiscal year 2026. There is an additional 591,000 of TALU in construction in FY 2030. So this project will be continued. And this is largely MPO discretionary funding as well. From there, we've got Southern Parkway sidewalks in Bradenton. This project is not included in the next tip. We believe that this project is probably completed or nearing completion, and that's the reason why. And this project also has some local funds as well as MPO SU funds on them as well. The next is State Road 64 from 27th to Public Arms Boulevard. This project, I believe, was a request from the city of Bradenton to look at bike ped connections across the Braden River on State Road 64. There's currently no bike ped facilities on that stretch. This project did appear in the current work program. However, it is not included in the next draft FY26 tip. It would have been for a feasibility study. The MPO has not received any updates on what the study is or what the progress would be. But the most recent documents that we saw from FDOT was that this was sort of a wildcard project. So it may come back yet. And I believe it is consistent with the active transportation networking as well.
Has the city of Bradenton said anything to you guys?
No.
Okay,
Requesting a study.
okay.
So we'll continue to monitor as well. From there, we've got the Alderman Mert crossing, which you had mentioned earlier, Tanya. So this project is continued into the FY26 tip. There is some additional funding of SU for construction in FY26. So this is coupled with a resurfacing project that's happening on this stretch, and they'll be adding a pedestrian crossing for the trail. So that project will continue.
so this wasn't funded, this wasn't a city funded construction project? Okay.
It was goes with the resurfacing, and the MPO is funding the construction.
Okay, and that's for 26.
Yeah, letting
Okay.
date, the letting date is 26, so you probably won't see construction until 27.
Okay.
And it's gonna be over a year-long construction, because it's a full reconstruction of US 301. So if you guys take US 301 in the city, plan a different route. Take 41 instead.
And then the last project on the current priority list is Beach Road. This is a transit project, public transportation shelter. It is being continued in the next tip. I think they've done some refinements on the total construction costs, but that project is continued to be funded in FY 27. So from there, when we look at the draft FY 26 tip that we just got yesterday, the new project is the Legacy Trail and the Circus Trail extension. And this reflects the central funding that was put on that project for the city. So you'll see that project in there as well. We are also working with FDOT to add some MPO funding to move construction forward on the extension of the Circus Trail. And this brings us closer. Then on top of that, it's not in the FY 26 tip, so I'm leaving this as a placeholder for now, but we're also coordinating with FDOT to add MPO funding for the Beneva merge. And so this will connect from the Legacy Trail on Beneva over to Freeple Road, and then where we'll pick up Circus Trail extension into Bobby Jones and 17th Street. And then from there, we'll find a way to line up construction funding for the 17th Street connection to Nathan Henderson Park. And so this is that first real big piece of the east-west connection of the Legacy Trail out east of I-75. And some important connections. Yeah. So hoping to see that in the draft tentative at the very least.
For 26?
Correct.
Okay.
For design, well, you already did.
For construction, yeah.
But yeah, ideally, we've got a verbal commitment that we've got design money for both Beneva and Circus Trail to complete the designs, and then we're working with what we've got left.
Yeah.
Potentially some Suntrail money, hopefully, and then also what we have available for TA funds in 26 and 27. So it's a work in progress, but it's seeming more positive than not.
It sure does, thank you.
Does anyone have any questions about the ATP for Nina? I do. How would you recommend us move some of these projects forward, other than just submitting them randomly? I mean, is that all we have to do, is say, pick this off the list and submit it, and you guys will figure out the rest? Or like, what is the recommended action path forward to seeing more of these getting funded?
I think,
Do you want me to answer that? There will be less actually to be funded, and then you'll see this in the upcoming cost feasible plan. You know, I don't want to share too much, but it's still in draft format, but it's grim, quite frankly, considering what state and federal revenue resources look like and what we will have available, primarily pipeline projects for the next 20 years. So we're not looking at pulling more of these off the list. It's how do we accomplish the things that we've already started would be a good place to start. Not to rain on anyone's parade, but that's the reality of the revenue situation, at least on the state and federal side. My answer would be more refined in what we're submitting. That would be how we accomplish more that's on this list. Getting beyond what we're looking at in terms of the extension of Legacy Trail, filling sidewalk gaps, we're simply not in a place in state and federal revenue to add more to the list.
And if the federal reauthorization restricts funding away from trails or bicycle and pedestrian facilities, as has been, put out there, then that could affect the availability of funding as well. Now, on the other hand, we continue to argue and try to present to federal representatives when we have a chance, and certainly our local elected officials, because they will have a chance to, re-emphasize that the value of bicycle and pedestrian and trails facilities is not solely recreational, that these types of facilities support long-standing established national and state interests in, improving safety, supporting economic development and community livability, and many more benefits to residents and visitors. So, which is something that seems to have been tossed out.
Well, it just seems to me with the safety data that was just presented, how our vulnerable users are increasing
Yes.
in our KSI. It would be foolish for us not to invest in these kinds of projects because that's what's gonna keep our vulnerable users safe. Creating facilities for them.
We wholeheartedly agree that the fiscal elements that are attached to that do not, right? And I think that is what we're gonna continue to push back against and say, we do need additional funding to accomplish these things.
And they are important.
And I'll talk a little bit more in the next item, but that's the reality of situation. And yes, primarily, we really won't see many projects in terms of capacity or widening $150 million. We're primarily spending our resources on these types of projects due to the need, quite frankly, and how we, envision what we're trying to accomplish, right? It's not just that we can't just continually add more projects to the list and hope that we're gonna find money to fund them. Those sources don't really exist, and depending on the state's point, discretionary grant could be entirely reevaluated, determine that they're not viable in federal legislation. So we have to find other ways to continue to fund those things.
Any other questions related to ATP? So we'll have a whole funding discussion next, so I hear.
Yeah, a whole one, I included one that was directly impacting the MPO and MPOs around the state, and that was carbon reduction funding. Carbon reduction funding was a piece of the IIJA, bill act, the funding mechanism for the MPO was a formula-based fund dedicated to carbon reduction activities around the state, around the country. We were averaging about $2 or $3 million a year of those funds, many of which were used for projects that we've just discussed. Money for overpasses, money for signal timing, sidewalks, bike lanes, et cetera, was programmed. Total of about $50 million statewide was programmed using carbon reduction funds. In the current fiscal year, about another $270 million and change was programmed out in the outer years. That money was then sent back to the federal government as part of a directive out of the state and the governor's office. So we were then tasked with recycling through our work program and figuring out how to best address any gaps. Looks like at this point, we're not overly impacted. It was, a few $1 million that we had to come up with. I'm still working with our liaison staff on the program on identifying any shortfalls we might have, but unfortunately, a number of these projects related to bike ped trails are all impacted. These are the type of funds that are used to help accommodate some of those things. So we're paying close attention to any legislation that comes out, any future NOFOs, meaning anything that we get funding authorizations that come down that might have adjustments of specific requirements like SSA, for example, SS4A, safety grants, those might have different directives in them. Carbon reduction, certainly do not know what's going to happen going forward. We've not been told to not use them and plan to use them. However, we don't really envision a path forward in which the state is going to draw down those funds in future years. So not only are we seeing cost up and about a 50% revenue projection compared to 2045, we're also losing an additional formula funding source. So that paints the picture of where we are and why it is so difficult to fund the ever-growing number of projects on these priority lists. So I don't have any real major updates other than this point that we're trying to kind of balance the work program for the estimated losses that we've seen, at least in District 1. So that's still a work in progress, and we'll keep you posted. I'm waiting on a project list from Wayne and Pam that specifically outlines the projects that were impacted and whether they were using our funding sources to supplement that, or if those are going to be deferred or deleted based off of that return of funds. So that's where I am currently with federal funding. Any questions?
Any questions for Ryan?
Great. Thank you.
Okay. All right, looks like we still don't have a quorum. Oh, yeah. Well, not in here, maybe. Oh, okay. It says Ryan, but I guess you're taking it.
I'll take it, yes.
Okay. The 2040 long range transportation plan, Nina.
I'll be quick about it. Just wanted to give you a quick update on where we are with the LRTP. So at this point, we are getting closer and closer to adoption, and the adoption date will be in October. We're hoping, we will get out a full entire draft of the 2050 LRTP for public comment no later than August 1st for a 30-day comment period. So you'll be able to take a look at the whole thing and provide your feedback. We've been sharing parts of the LRTP piecemeal, and some of those reports that we already have been drafted in your agenda packet. They include the background research report, the vision chapter, golden objectives and prioritization piece as well. So you can take a look at those. We are 95% done with our chapter updates, so we're getting ready to finalize those. We're finalizing those priority projects. We completed the 2050 revenue forecast, which is what you've now heard Ryan talk about a little bit about. And so next is just drafting that cost feasible plan, that list of projects against the revenue that we have projected for the next 25 years. As part of the cost feasible plan, we have 3 more opportunities for engagement to provide your input at this point. We have a workshop coming up on April 28th. It'll be at SCF Bradenton. At the workshop, we've invited our local agencies to give very quick 3-minute presentations on what the local priorities are relative to the 2050 long range plan and the goals and objectives. So you'll be able to hear from your jurisdictions about what those are. And then we'll give some discussion about the cost feasible plan, some of the projects that we're looking at. We'll also do an outreach event on May 6th. It'll be at the Bishop in downtown Bradenton, and then we'll also release a survey at the end of the month. So those are 3 other outreach opportunities in addition to the public comment period coming up. We will present a draft of the LRTP in September to the committees and to the board. Then we'll bring it back in October for final adoption. So coming up quick. As part of the development of the cost feasible plan, we did those revenue forecasts and we did town tours with each of our jurisdictions. So we had 10 meetings, I believe, through February and March, each of the jurisdictions where we got to talk about the local priorities. So that has informed the draft cost feasible up to this point. We've got that workshop, and then we'll have a draft of the cost feasible plan in May. For your input. That gives us a couple of months for further feedback from the jurisdictions before it goes out for public comment. So you'll keep an eye out on that in May. We'll be sending that out for you as well. Just taking a look at the cost feasible plan. This is sort of a process that we go through. Won't spend a lot of time. We take a look at various revenue sources, including local revenue sources, state and federal revenue sources. But this is basically where we ended up in looking at revenue estimates. There's about a 50% decrease in state and federal funds relative to the previous plan. And then added to that also is the increase in project costs that have taken place over the last few years. And then what I've heard our consultants say is that this chart really is backwards. And it means that there's a lot of leaning on local jurisdictions for funding these regional projects. And that translates into a cost feasible plan that needs to be highly strategic so that we can accomplish our goals. So we'll have a memo of the revenue forecast available as a draft as well in May, so you can do a little bit more detailed reading on what that means. And then this is what we have for the outreach event. We'll share this information as well after the meeting, but we hope to see you there, so we can hear your plans on this last phase of the LRTP. And that's what I have.
Any questions for Nina on the 2050 LRTP? Good luck as that moves forward with your limited funding. Like I said, we don't have a quorum, so we can't vote, but we do have Manatee reps. So maybe someone would be interested in volunteering to be the vice chair, and we can appoint you at the next meeting with quorum. Is that appropriate? Out of our 2 people? Jennifer, Agustina?
I pass.
Volunteers. All right, well,
Well, how many members from Manatee County are on the committee? Not here today, but in general.
Do we have someone from Palmetto?
Longboat, with Kadiba, yeah, and you got Manatee, right?
Right, but you also have like citizen representatives, right?
Yeah, John and Rich could potentially volunteer. Rich is
I'm too old.
Jimmy jammed. John is not interested. All right, well, you'll have to think about it, because next time somebody's gotta be a vice chair and you'll either have to volunteer or be voluntold. So thank you.
That's a good word.
All right, we'll do once around the table, starting, okay.
I just want to say I've missed a number of meetings because of some personal problems, not problems. My wife died and it's been a year sort of getting things together, but I'm back and I plan to participate fully going forward. So I have just one observation. It seems like from what you guys are saying that you're, given the current political environment in Florida, that funding is probably as uncertain as it has ever been for projects like this. And I sort of see carbon reduction and say to myself, that's history. I mean, just reading what I'm
Agreed.
So in other words,
At least in the near term.
these projects are really facing an uphill battle.
Yeah, and we're very limited. I mean, you look at the resource allocation we get, I mean, for Tallow and TA, as we call it, Transportation Alternative Funds, the NPO ourselves only get about $1 million a year for the entire 2-county region. Doesn't get you very far, right? When you're talking about everything from, PD&Es through design, right away construction. It doesn't do a whole lot. We have to rely heavily on local sources, state sources, discretionary programs, things like that to be able to help. But that the NPO was never meant to be a sole source provider of finances. It's a way to prioritize local priorities and bring them together. So yes, we fully agree that we're challenging, we're dealing with an uphill battle here. In terms of funding some of these programs and the projects that are not, mainline I-75 projects, CIS projects, for example.
But that doesn't mean the projects aren't gonna happen. They're local priorities, they're regional priorities. We see projects that everyone said, oh, that'll never happen, and Tuttle's is getting a sidewalk at northern Sarasota County. And that was identified as a gap 15 plus years ago, probably. And now it's getting built. And so the funding you're gonna see private sector investment in pedestrian facilities and trails, walkability, the things that our LRTP tries to highlight, placemaking and livability are big, important items for the public and, therefore the elected officials respond. And I think that they, at some point, Congress will hear the importance of continuing to invest in connectivity and in community development that supports these facilities. So I don't think it's completely, going away, but I do think that it's gonna be really challenging. And in Florida, the legislature, it sounds like they're gonna continue to stay with the SunTrail funding, even while they may try to restrict, the use of local funds, for certain things. So it's a good time to be involved.
That was a positive one out of the Senate, right? When they, there was a vote to eliminate sunshine funding. And that was pushed back by the governor and by, the Senate. So there is positive news out of there, but, expanding beyond what's currently out there is certainly not on the table, I don't think. And I think they're trying to restrict rather than government support. So
Should be watching the
Good luck to all you folks fighting the fight.
taxes. All right, thanks, John. Rich?
Thanks for all the hard work. It obviously shows there's a lot of homework for us all to do with going through all this, but very much appreciated. And remember, I think we just have to continue to reach out and support Bike Ped funding, all of us and people who we're connected to.
Tanya?
I just wanted to let you know there's an event going on this Friday at UTC for the Florida Suncoast Safe Kids Day that myself and Mary and a few of us are going to be out there doing helmet fitting and helping them with that safety event. So that is on Friday between 11:30 and 2 by the Dillard's Courtyard. So Just a little by the by.
Jeff,
Number two.
Jennifer? Irene?
Well, one, note for the minutes, if they could fix my name from Diane to Darlene, that would be great.
When they bring it to the next time.
Yeah.
To the next
When you have a
meeting.
more.
It's wrong in like a, an open, comments and the list of names, so. And then secondly, we completed our rest stop at Edmondson Road. Our MERT over there for the Northport connector from the Legacy Trail, so that's completed. And already, they were using it literally after the construction was done that day, so it was great.
It's excellent.
Yeah,
I
thank you.
live in Turnberry.
Oh, cool.
Because these were the guys over there.
A+.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
Thank you, James.
In working with the Newtown chat, they've identified lighting as a major issue for them, specifically near Booker Middle and the historic Reed House.
What was the second location?
I believe the Leonard Reed House.
Oh, okay.
So initially we were trying to figure out who even has jurisdiction, but now we're looking to figure out if there's a map potentially of working operational lighting. And if not, we're gonna look for some help to identify. We're also gonna be doing a walkthrough of Newtown to manually mark them with maybe a ribbon, is what we came up with. And then bring that to either the county or the city here, depending on who has jurisdiction. Additionally, the total sidewalk does look very nice. But I noticed on my drive here that there's no lighting anywhere. And because of the Newtown chat's identification that, especially in the morning, maybe they think it might be a timing issue because it happened right after the time change. But it's extremely dark during the school drop off. So with the addition of these sidewalks, I think it could exacerbate the issue by allowing more children to walk to school in the dark, creating another hazard. The bike bash on May 3rd, Inglewood Bike Bash, bike safety event. It'll be great. We hope to see you all there. That's all.
Do you have a flyer you can send to the NPO to
Yes.
send out?
Yeah.
Great. Sorry.
The tunnel sidewalk has begun. You can see concrete and stuff on the ground already. The lighting was not part of the scope of that. Generally, lighting is a very important part of the pedestrian network, but also a very expensive part. So a lot of times these projects, we don't necessarily get to put them in. It is something we try to look at the beginning, but then a lot of times it falls in and falls out of projects. So we're aware of that. But the study you're doing, are you just identifying needs, or do you have funding for?
No,
Okay.
this is brought to us by the citizens in the
Okay.
chat maybe two or three meetings ago.
All right,
So
okay.
we're just trying to figure out what lights are working.
Okay, so do you need an inventory of the light poles?
That would be ideal.
Okay, I know last summer we did an exercise with our interns where we had a list, and we had you'll see all the light poles are marked with like an identification number. It's like a yellow sticker with 5 numbers that we identify that, we have an inventory of that stuff, right? Because I think the county pays FPL, there's some kind of arrangement, so we have to have an inventory of all the lights, so there's probably a list somewhere for their county maintained roads. I don't own that list, but I think we could probably help you with that.
Yeah.
Down the road.
Awesome, that'll be great.
Other than that, I think I talked about it earlier, our Safe Streets for All grant and study continues. We should have a draft within the next week or so for our local stakeholders to review. Once that's complete, I think we'll see some projects emerge out of that we can share with you guys here at the committee.
Thanks. James, if you could just copy me in, or maybe you can schedule us to go on the walkthrough with you at the city, because are you looking at lighting that like the structure exists, but it's not working, or are you looking at new lighting?
We're looking at lights that are currently out.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so why don't you just reach out and include me in that, so someone from the city can go with you and do the walkthrough with you?
Okay,
Because that might just be a simple click to fix.
okay,
Additionally, the Newtown Community Redevelopment agency, they have funding for lighting throughout Newtown, so if there's some interest in like, this place needs additional lighting or whatever that is, I don't know what it is, but that might be something you might wanna reach out to Wayne, who is like the city staff person that deals with them as like a request to provide that information to the CRA if they're interested.
Gotcha.
But like, you can reach out to me and I can get you connected with all that, so that way we can advance some of that with
Awesome.
what you're doing.
Awesome.
The city's Alderman, well, the Legacy Trail extension through South Main Parkway is underway. It's under construction as we speak. The clearing and grubbing is complete. There's some structure that's already been installed. They're working on the lighting right now, like the infrastructure to get that. And there will be some artwork installed at the entrance on the park side. So I don't know if you know Jorge Blanco, but if you go on US 41, closer to downtown, it's like all those like little abstract yellow people in the middle of the median. Well, he's working with someone who's donating his art there, and it's gonna be like that same abstract people. There might be a dog, it'll be cute. They're on a bike. It's gonna be awesome. So that, I need to get with you on a name because there's gonna have to be a sign. Is it the Legacy Trail extension? I think that's like how
Or your piece in.
in South Main Park. I mean, it was like Friends of the Legacy Trail thought that it was it is the Legacy Trail.
Yeah,
But that's really touchy. Let's talk about.
Everything seems to be an extension of Legacy Trail,
But they
and sometimes it's
announced it
not,
that
so,
way
yeah.
on their thing, so I don't want anybody to come for us, so just wanna get with
Yeah.
you, and we're creating a sign, so.
So it is being constructed right now. Okay, cause there was that, we were talking earlier about that it was gonna be 26.
No, the Alderman, okay, so
Okay.
here, I'm getting to it. So this is getting constructed right now, and we currently have a project online with Lochner, who is surveying and designing the connection from from South Payne Parkway, where that cross street is, to US 301. So we'll make that connection. And then FDOT is gonna create the crossing in their resurfacing
Okay, understood.
actually, it's the MPO is gonna be doing it because it's their funding, so it's the MPO's crossing. We should put a plaque, just like Ford.
Thanks.
Okay.
So hopefully all the stars align where all of that can get completed together. Obviously, this segment of the trail is gonna get completed before any of that, but
Right, okay.
the construction that's currently occurring right now should be completed by June, but I've been told we're ahead of schedule and under budget, but that could change dramatically in the next 10 minutes, so we'll see. If all goes according to plan. Additionally, that's all I have for now. I can't think of anything else. So that's all we have for today. Thank you guys for being here and participating. We encourage you to continue to show up to these meetings and participate, because it's really important that we have this and we continue to have this no matter the current political climate and funding allocation. So thank you all. Have a good one. Adjourned. That is, so where the Legacy Trail is that School Avenue, and there's that crossing. What we're doing is just